has it that Tony wrote his thesis in 6 weeks, and those who know Tony well can easily believe it. And he did it with his ever-trusty voice recorder, and that's one way to write a PhD thesis, I'll tell you. He also mentioned that Tony came down on Boxing Day. Well, those who've lived closely with Tony know that that's the least of what you can expect. Traveling on an aircraft with Tony was purgatory. It was hell, okay? And I remember years ago, Dan Beruskin and I, Tony's very amiable patent lawyer, were flying all the way to Denver, and it was a long, bloody trip that we were facing. And as we walked up the ramp to the aircraft, Dan said to me, "You grab his pencils, I'll take the paper." Rome has the Om, and Tony is not quite in that group, but he has a unit named after him, and the unit is the BRL, which stands for Barringer Research Limited, and it came about in the following fashion. Tony breezed into the lab one afternoon with a brown paper bag with a small scattering of electronic components in it, a piece of wire hanging out of it, and about 40 feet of paper chart, about which he was very excited, and rightly so, because the paper chart actually consisted of 2 airborne flights over the same flight line, and lo and behold, the response was exactly the same for both flights. Well, at that point we derived the name BRL because the BRL stood for a unit that we didn't know the calibration for. For example, it might be a span of that much was 10 BRLs, or it might be 20 BRLs. We certainly weren't sure about that. Moreover, we didn't know where the 0 was, so that it might actually be 3,020 BRLs, or it might be, because we didn't know the polarity either, it might be actually 80 BRLs. But don't forget, every time we flew the same damn line, and we flew it a lot, it always came up with the same results. Well, that's to give you a little bit of the state of the art back in those days, which was in the 1967, 68, which is damn near 40 years ago. And at that point, it's hard to imagine now how undeveloped these things were. We have a vastly greater knowledge about Earth phenomena and the involvement of electromagnetics with the Earth and that sort of thing, but at that time we had none. And it wasn't just those of us at Barringer Research, although it could easily have been, Tony, because we were all from many different fields, but there just simply wasn't that much known. And I'd like you to think about that for a second, because in fact those BRLs in that case, and they could have been applied to any of Tony's original instruments, and in fact were you know, an indicator of how raw and how raw the state of the art, the knowledge was, and how new Tony's concepts were. He was indeed a leader and of breathtaking magnitude. He knew where to go, and very often it proved to be the place to go. Occasionally not so good, but working for Tony was a truly remarkable experience. And Tony, without a moment's hesitation, I can tell you that working for you for 7 long years, but always exciting, was certainly the highlight of my working career. And I remember the other week I was lying in bed trying to think of what I might say tonight. I stayed awake for 3 hours laughing and laughing and laughing at all the funny times we've had together. Do you remember going up in the Learjet? Tony came running into the back of the plant. Tony's office was in the front. And he said, "Hey, anybody want to go up in the Learjet?" And one of Tony's many contacts in the world of business and science had come up from the States in his Learjet. And so Tony and I and Dave Whiteman got to go on our first and only Learjet flight in a 3-passenger Learjet. If you ever get the opportunity, do it. Anyway, Tony, thank you very, very much for the opportunities that you gave, certainly me and everybody else who worked for you. We will not forget it. Thank you.